Welcome home. We're back here. So it's nice to see everybody, that we can share the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha together again. As our sensei have shared over the years, at the beginning of each memorial service, that today's service is both our regular Sunday service and the monthly memorial. For those of us who are here for the March monthly memorial, it is a time to remember our loved ones who have passed away before us. This is an opportunity to make a spiritual offering by offering incense and to take time to express our gratitude for all the benefits that we have already received. This service is a way to say thank you to your loved ones and those who have already passed away. Buddhist memorial services are in memories of loved ones, but the real purpose for having a service is for us, the ones who remain behind. Joy did a beautiful job reading the names, and I want to thank Joy and Jesse for leading the sutra. So I'll make this quick because I know the Dharma School kids have to leave early. So anyway, I got to do a little brief talk. But I want to thank you, the Dharma School students, for attending service today. I think it is very important that you participate in the memorial services for many reasons. I also want to thank you. They were supposed to lead the Nirvana service a couple of weeks ago, and because we were shut down, they couldn't. So unfortunately, I guess we'll get that next year or another time. I don't know. But Adrian and Isabella did get to participate by sharing their readings. But the Sangha truly is grateful for you being here and all the talents. Your participation in leadership and temple activities impacts Midwest Buddhist Temple not only today, but in its future. And we do appreciate it because you are the future, right? Some of the names that Joy read this morning were people who helped to establish Midwest Buddhist Temple. Their work and dedication allow us to sit here today and the teachings of the Dharma. You may know some of the names or some of the people of the names that were read. And we know that names are very important for many, many reasons. You may be named after an ancestor, a current family member, an athlete, an author, or simply a name that somebody in your family liked and wanted to call you. As an adult, I remember asking my mother once why my name's Cynthia. And she said, well, I had read a book, and Cynthia was the heroine she wrote in the book. And I said, well, what was the name of the book? Because I'd like to read it. And she didn't remember the name of the book, unfortunately. And I did modest research and have not yet found the book that could have been written before my time, but I'm going to find it because somewhere out there in the AI will find it for me. I've also been known as Cindy, Thea, Dr. Mee, Professor, but a relatively new name I was given a few years ago is Koza, my Buddhist name. When our minister assistant program training was concluding, Reverend Ron asked us to think about a name that we would like to be called to represent our Buddhist name. It didn't take me long to identify my Buddhist name. I suggested backseat. I know it sounds like a strange name, a Buddhist name, but it meant a lot to me. Way back in about 2011 at an EBL conference in New York, the service was beginning, and I was standing in the back of the temple with Wayne, and he said, why don't you go up to the front where the expensive seats are, meaning come up front. And I said, no, I like to sit in the back for various reasons. And he said, oh, you're a backseat Buddhist. And I love when he said that because it's true. So, and when Omni and I first started coming, we sat in the back seat, and we still do unless we get bumped, which we accept because we bump somebody every now and then. But as soon as I came home, I created a blog called Backseat Buddhist. I only wrote on it 3 or 4 times, but I shared some of my thoughts about life and Buddhism. So when Reverend Ron asked me to identify my Buddhist name with significant spiritual meaning, I said backseat. So Reverend Ron in his research and naming us in Japanese, that Koza has many meanings and somewhat related. Loosely translated, through my understanding, Koza can mean something like lecture hall unit, high seat, podium, high position sitting. to observe, check things out, watch, and reaches across the aisle. And that's what being a backseat Buddhist is. Sitting in the back is very different than sitting in the front. As you know, as students and as people, if you sit in a different seat than you did in a classroom, it's so weird. It's just like, that's my seat, you can't sit there, But we do become accepted to those seats. But wherever we sit, it's something different. Sitting up front, you see very different things than you do in the back. I know exactly, because I sit in the back, who's supposed to sit where and when they're not here, because they're not in their seat. And then somebody comes in and sits in their seat, and it's like, uh-oh. But anyway, my name is Koza, my backseat name. Anyway, but as we know through the services and through Dharma School, that Shinran had several names. And I think he had about 8 names in his life. His birth name was Matsuwakamo. When he entered the monastery at 9 years old, he became Hanin. After he left the monastery, he became a disciple of Honen, and his name was changed to Shako. At one point, Honen, his teacher, also named him Zen Shin, and eventually he became Shinran, combining 2 names of 2 different the 7 masters. For a while, Shinran went also by the name Fujiyoshi Zaman, and when he was exiled and went off, he named himself Gotuka, means bald fool, neither a monk nor a lay person. And after his death, Shinran was given the name Shinshin Daishi. So like Shinran, you may have a variety of names. So I ask you, the Dharma School kids, students, if you have a pet or a stuffed animal, did you name it? And how did you choose its name? Do you have different names? What are you usually called? Maybe your teachers call you something different than what your parents or family members call you. My brother's name was Kirk, but for some reason he was called Kirk everywhere, except my father called him Skipper or Ike. I've never figured those out. I think next time I talk to him, I'm going to ask him it. But you may or may not know the names you were given. But I know a lot of thought went into your names. I know your parents put a lot of energy. Yeah, I say mom's going, yeah. And Omni's full name is Omni Obadiah Kirk Jonathan, even though, I know, ask him to write that out. Which are all family names that go, except Omni, that go back 7 generations. So he knows our family history through his full name. Do you have a nickname? If you have a nickname, what is it and why, and who calls it to you? Maybe sometime during Dharma School or on your way home or eating lunch or dinner with your family, find out why their names are called what they are. Why do your parents have the names they have? But mostly important is to ask you, if you were to choose a Buddhist name, a name that represents you spiritually through a Buddhist perspective, what would you choose? How would you name yourself with a Buddhist name? Don't take names for granted. They all mean something. They're all very serious. Names are very important. Again, on behalf of the Sangha, I want to thank all the Dharma School students for what you do. Go. You can go now. And even though I challenged them finding out their name history, you guys can do it too. Does everybody know why you name what you name? So amazing to see these kids grow up. I mean, when I first started, they were like here, now they're like, how much taller kids are today? I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, it's good to be back home, isn't it? It's good to feel good. Please put your hands in Gasho. This is a quote from Tatsu Uno. To die or not to die, we really don't have a choice. We can therefore only take care of our life body until the fullness of time in being extends our existence on earth. Namu Amida Butsu. Can you hear me? Am I okay? I keep hearing different sounds here. Okay. As we know from the 3 treasures, how rare and wondrous it is to have been born into human life, and now we live it. But when we enter this world, unknown to us at that time, we are starting an unknown path. We accept the gift of life just because we were born into it. And then each day we have to move forward on our life paths. We learn early in our lives that life and spiritual paths may not always be straight and easy to face. Throughout our life, we experience a variety of bumps, twists, and turns that challenge us. I grew up in Southwest Ohio, and I could talk like that if I really wanted to, but most of our roads were very twisty, hilly, and curvy, like in a lot of mountain states. Even though Ohio's not that mountainous, the southern part is. So when I go home now, it takes me a day or two to get used to driving those hilly, curvy paths, because up here, when we drive, it's pretty straight. And I mean, it's not a challenge like it is in some other places. So some individuals grow up in a flatter, straighter environment than others, where others, people's lives are more curvy and twisty like those in Southwest Ohio. In our memorial services, we celebrate those whose life paths have ended, regardless of how winding or how straight. Each memorial service is so impressive because the names of those who precede us in death are recognized. Reading the names out loud helps us to remember them. Most names that are shared are of people I've never met in life, but to hear their names allows me to know them in some way, know that they lived, and know that they existed. As we honor their lives, we recognize that they were born into this world, and they have lived in this world, and now they have died in this world and have physically left the world. Our memorial service reminds me of another quote by Uno. Buddhism is a path of supreme optimism, for one of its basic tenets is that no human life or experience is to be wasted, abandoned, or forgotten, but all should be transformed into a source of vibrant life, deep wisdom, and compassion living. The reading of the names help us to reflect on the vibrant lives that each of those names represented and lived. Like what I shared with the Dharma School, the names are important. And I shared this quote once before by Bansky. You die twice, one time when you stop breathing, and a second time a bit later on when somebody says your name for the last time. A similar quote to Bansky is one from Irvine Yalom, a professor at Stanford University. He says, someday soon, perhaps in 40 years, there will be no one alive who has ever known me. That's when I will be truly dead, when I exist in no one's memory. I thought a lot about how someone very old is the last living individual to have known some person or cluster of people. When that person dies, the whole cluster dies too and vanishes from the living. These two quotes have had a great, profound impact on what I think about names with post-death. But more importantly, they identify the essential need for us to keep the Midwest Temple Sangha cluster active and that the names are not shared for the last time. Through sharing the names, the Sangha is honoring each name as Bansky identifies and are acknowledged as part of the MBT cluster, as Yalom shares. And it is important that our Dharma School experiences the memorial services because they learn different aspects about life and death, and they participate in an honored ritual, and they hear the names, some they may recognize. Most like us, practicing gratitude, learning and sharing, the ancestors celebrating their MPD family. An understanding of interdependence is experienced, and impression is identified. As we live our daily lives, it's hard not to think about death. When thinking of our lives, our people's lives, we know somebody globally will die. Each of us in some way has experienced the death of a relative, friend, or acquaintance. Sometimes we learn more about them after they've died. We learn their challenges and how they might have suffered. Sometimes when I'm facing some challenge, I compare it to driving in the Southwest Ohio. And much of my life, I was influenced. Some of you might have read this book, The Little Engine That Could. All right? So The Little Engine That Could was a very important book, and was and is in my life. The little engine said she would help another engine that failed and stopped and couldn't do its job. And he was to deliver toys to the children in another community. But he had broken down. So the little engine said, sure, I'll help you out. At first, she encouraged herself, but she had to go on a path she'd never been, a higher mountain. And at first, she starts her chanting and saying, I think I can, and you can say this with me, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. But as she got higher up on the mountain and needs to go even higher and harder, she says, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And when she finally gets to the top of the mountain, she says, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. When she gets to the top of the mountain, she expresses gratitude and gratefulness for being there and having that support. The last few years, I have to admit, the Buddhist books, and I was trying to figure out which one I would share and show like I did The Little Engine, but I just know I've read a lot of books, right? And the Buddhist teachings, the sutras, and the Nibitsu have not totally replaced the little engine, but they're there with her, and they guide me and focus me. Another quote by Uno kind of supports this is that when he writes, awakening is dynamic, constantly evolving in accordance with life realities. The little engine had a reality she had to face, just like we do on a regular fashion. She faced her reality successfully, climbed the mountain, and became awakened. Uno's quote provides me assurance and encouragement during challenges and tough times. But sometimes I need a little extra support to help me accept my realities, and I need to lean on someone. And Reverend Ron becomes that person sometime. Back in October 2020, a few years ago, after a Wednesday evening class, he had been leading a discussion on living. And I don't remember much about the discussion per se, but I know I had great reflection afterwards. And so I emailed Reverend Ron later and I said, why do we live? You know, the whole discussion was about living, but we never talked about why we live. And Reverend Ron simply replied, because we were born. Nicely profound, simple answer. I liked his response. But he said also he thought it was an odd question. And I didn't think it was so odd because I thought a lot of people think about why do we live, you know. So I replied, why is it an odd question? And again, comes back, we live because we are born. Which then, of course, triggered another thought in my brain or whatever. Well, why was I born? You know, why are we born? Why is each of us born? And we know the possibility to be born is very minimal. I mean, it's like 1 in 400 trillion. One chance out of 400 trillion. We're here, right? Which confirms the whole thing, how rare and wondrous it is to be born into human life, and now we live it. Because we are born, now we are living. So what does that mean? How do we choose to live our lives? How do we choose to live the teachings of the Dharma, whatever our profession is, whether we're a professor, a doctor, a minister, a dentist, artist, whatever our job is, how do we live the Dharma? We are familiar with the Four Noble Truths, and the first one is that life is suffering. So why would I choose to live and embrace each moment, knowing that I and others are going to suffer? I'm reminded by the Buddha, who says, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The choice is entirely ours. It's that simple. Therefore, when I drive the southwest roads of Ohio, I choose to suffer, right? Or I can put my trust in other people's drivings accept my path, and move forward. And also say the Nibitsu and put my trust in Amida. Yet another Uno quote reminds me that Pure Land Buddhism may suggest another worldly orientation, but its primary focus is on the here and the now. Because death is imminent, Uno embraces that each moment is like precious. That's why I had this bracelet. I think I shared this before too. It says, cherish each moment, you know. So, not that wearing it guarantees, but it reminds me I'm to cherish right now. Back in the mid-late 60s, when I was a young woman, there was a very popular saying, have a beautiful day. And that became very common. And so I always think, well, when I die and get buried in the Dartown Cemetery, among all my ancestors, my tombstone will say, have a beautiful day. Well, I've decided to change it. My tombstone will now say, cherish each moment. I want to get off script, which I always do. When I was writing this talk, I had a memory. I like those memories when they come out of nowhere. And this is when Omni and I were living in New York City, and we just came home from Central Park, and we were playing. He's like 3, maybe 4 years old, and he goes, out of the blue, Mommy, where did I come from? I'm going, I wasn't expecting this question for a few years, you know. So I'm going to say, all right, how do I tell him how he was born and whatever? So in a very modest way, I explained something, right? And he goes, no, Mom. Are we from Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan? And so being born to different people means different things and where we come from. So that was one of those moments, right? I'm going to change. As you know, some of you know, not too many of you know, but back in September 2021, I was attacked by a pit bull. And it was not fun. It was a very scary time, obviously. It would have been more life-threatening had there not been an alley guardrail. I was in the alley and the dog was in the yard. So this guardrail kind of prevented him to get totally on top. The heartbeat of my life flashed before me at that time, and even sometimes a reflection during my healing. The day of the attack was the day after Sune Nakagawa, one of our former members here, had died. She had gone to the hospital with something that didn't appear too seriously, and unexpectedly, she died. I wondered whether her death was a gift, whether she wanted to suffer, and if she died gracefully. So when the anesthesiologist was putting me under to do surgery, I couldn't help but remember Sune. So as I'm on the table, or bed, I was looking at the ceiling, saying the Nibitsu, while seeing Sune's face. She had just died, and she was now already my surgery angel protecting me. Saying the Nibitsu and seeing Sune's face provided me the comfort I needed at that time. A couple weeks after the attack, again, after one of Reverend Ron's Wednesday night classes, I was experiencing some anxiety. So I reached out to him again. I emailed saying, I appreciate that life is a heartbeat away and have accepted that. But suddenly during class, the reality of how close that heartbeat was to the possibility of dying became very apparent. Such a reality began to take over and have a deeper understanding that death really is omnipresent. I can sometimes be good at calming myself, but right now I could use some help. This is still in my email to him. I said, are there any Buddhist ideas to help me accept such a reality? And Reverend Ron's reply was, death is always a heartbeat away, so we just need to embrace it and not run away from it. By embracing both life and death, we can be free of both life and death. So each new breath is a gift and should be embraced. He then shared that one of his professors had talked about enlightenment in Shinjin and referred to it as perfect freedom. Although the professor never told Reverend Ron exactly what perfect freedom meant, the understanding was Perfect freedom is when we are free from our limitations, our fears, and attachments. So I pondered overnight, and the next morning about started another email conversation, and I asked about perfect freedom, asking him if his professor said if we're controlling our own lives, does that mean we also are controlling our death? And if we experience a fear and we face that fear, do we learn to respect that fear in the future and that fear enhances our life? But if we never face our fears, do we ever deepen our understanding of life? And Reverend Ron said, yep, you're right, that's it. I guess I needed what happened to me with the dog attack to embrace and welcome my perfect freedom, and to give me the courage to let go and be even more welcoming to Amita. Even though I was close to death, when push comes to shove, it's no big deal, because each day, each of us is near death, and we should not fear it. I told Reverend Ron I was happy that I reached out to him and complimented him on replying and giving me the support I needed. The last couple of weeks, we've been fortunate to have Reverend Bob do Dharma Talks. And I will share briefly, I learned on Friday that the Sacramento Temple was vandalized by white supremacists. And you can find about it online, as well as the current Sensei, Reverend Yuki, has a beautiful message online as well. But in some way, the vandalism to the temple puts a greater focus to the messages that both Reverend Patty and Reverend Bob gave us. 2 weeks ago, Reverend Bob says, "Wake up. This is a one and only day we know. It's a gift." He asked us, how much would your life be for an hour? How much is your life worth as a life? Each day is a gift. Don't waste it. Nothing is forever. Do not take it for granted. I never thought of putting my life to a dollar value, but it's an interesting concept. Reverend Patty provided some interesting connections to living life and the Olympics and athletic rules. For example, she says our lives are not defined within time periods. We never know when the fourth quarter is going to end. Each athlete has to play their best at each game. That's what we need to do. Each day, we don't know when that fourth quarter will end. Reverend Patty referenced the Buddha as Coach Buddha, which I think is a timely analogy. And in her comments, again, a parallel to Uno when he says, no human life should be wasted, abandoned, or forgotten, but should be transformed into a source of vibrant life, deep wisdom, and compassionate living. Our memorial services and our Jodo Shinshu ancestors and friends have their talented lives and traveled their paths to the future, have given us the sutras, traditions, and teachings, and encourage us to play it forward so that we can have the Dharma School kids here when they're our age. Kind of weird. I can't help but reflect on the Walk for Peace. I'm sure most of you are aware of it. A couple weeks ago, 24 monks from Texas and their dog Aloka walked 2,300 miles, 100 days, with each step dedicated to raise awareness and hope, peace, loving kindness, harmony, love, and compassion. We too can take our physical and spiritual steps along our paths of gratitude and kindness in our own lives and others. Let us all walk together on our daily paths to enlightenment in a common cluster of an MBT cluster of peacemakers. Yes, hard is it to be born into this world, but I can't help wondering, is it harder to die than it is to be born? And I guess I'll find out someday. But until then, I will live my life as identified by the Buddha and others. And a quote by Venerable Panakara, the lead monk on the walk: peace already abides within each of us, and happiness is already present with us. We have simply forgotten. This present moment is the time to awaken peace and happiness once again. We can walk awaken peaceful life practicing what Coach Buddha shared, and our coaches I referenced today, Reverend Ron, Bob, Patty, Uno, and the Dalai Lama, to live a life of wisdom and compassion. Death is a heartbeat away. We are born to live this life. Each breath is a gift. The Dharma is everywhere. Cherish each moment. Wake up. This is our one and only life. Never take things for granted. Saying the Nibitsu brings comfort. Our awakening is dynamic and involves our realities. By embracing both life and death, we can be free. Rejoice in the moment. Be free of your limitations. We can walk in peace together, alone, for the rest of our lives. But we want to embrace the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Please put your hands together in Gassho. By the Dalai Lama. We are visitors on this planet. We are here for 90 or 100 years at the very most. During that period, we must try to do something good, something useful with our lives. If you contribute to other people's happiness, you will find the true goal, the true meaning of life. Namo Amida Butsu.